You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode 13, Made in Japan. And coming to you from the steaming hot suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And I'm your co-host, John the Wasp Matola.
The Wasp. Welcome.
Yes.
If you want to keep up to date on the show, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the show, please feel free to go onto Patreon, become a patron, donate as much or as little as you want. Anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a month would be highly appreciated. We'll take anything that you can get. But, you know, if you receive any value from the show, if it keeps you entertained on your commute, if you just like keeping up to date on or listening to old stories about the band, please, you can either become a patron or give us a review on Apple Podcasts, or both. Both would be preferable. So thank you very much for everybody who's been listening, and we get tons of comments and feedback on Twitter and Instagram and everything, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you do donate $10,000, then wow, you must really like this podcast. And I had something much wittier to say about it, but I forgot. I was just like, if you're doing $10,000, then like something's going on here.
Yeah, well, let us know whatever we can do, and we'll be there for you.
Yeah, let us know what we're doing right, and we'll keep doing it.
Let us know what we can do to get into job quitting territory. A one-time $10,000 might not do it, but hey, if you can do something recurring, we could definitely talk. $10,000 a month?
That is a big Deep Purple fan.
Yeah, that's what we'll take it. Yeah. Well, and we'll definitely have to up our production standards. I'll feel like I'm letting that person down if we continue at this level.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll also come to your house and record there if you want. Whatever you want, you got it. So we had some audio video kind of issues. Well, we had an audio issue which caused us to restart our meeting, which was the recurring issue. It happens every so often where I sound like a demon or a robot, but only John can hear it. So it's a little distracting to really do a show where I'm just like, he's pretending I don't sound like a demon. We just had a huge issue starting the show because there was some sort of weird visual thing going on my audio recorder, which was the equivalent of somebody just going, hey, 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 through the entire show. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to ignore this for, potentially 2 hours. So yeah, we restarted the show after that. So same thing with John. We have to restart if he's getting those weird glitching robot demon voices. Hearing those in his headphones is a little distracting. So we restarted the audio, and unfortunately in the process, I did not restart the video. So we only had like 8 to 10 minutes of video, which wasn't really enough to even put in. So the previous week we had an episode about Fireball's special edition, which nobody could see because of all these copyright issues with the video. Then we do Machine Head, probably Deep Purple's best-selling ever album, play the album in its entirety. YouTube is like, that's cool, no problem, and our video doesn't work. So we've got a beautiful video up there that no one can see, at least in any United States territories. Let us know if you're any outside there, what you think of the video. And then we had a episode where there's no video, just an audio feed up on YouTube. So enjoy that.
Quality content coming to you from the Deep Purple Podcast.
Yes, and it's inferior quality to what you're hearing on the podcast. So really check that out on YouTube. But if for some reason you're digging this on YouTube, go right ahead. We don't have a ton of subscribers, but we'll take it.
Yeah, donate that $10,000. That'll, if you're out there, that'll really help some of these issues.
That'll clear a lot of things up. I definitely will be able to upgrade my rig a little bit here. I put this studio together in 2014, so it's getting a little old, like the computer end of it. But
Nate and I might have to fly out to meet each other and neutral territory and have a couple of business dinners.
Yeah, exactly. Business dinner in LA to discuss. We need to have a meeting, because I feel like there's so much stuff coming up with episodes. Like, we have to have our first ever meeting and discuss, like, what the heck are we going to do with some of these episodes coming up.
Yeah.
The whole Ian, like, I've been reading like 10 books simultaneously on Deep Purple all through the timeline to get little tidbits from everything. And the whole, like, Gillen Glover leaving and Hughes Coverdale coming in is like, wow, that's going to be, our next episode could potentially be a long one if we include that all in there. But I also don't want to just have it be an episode of just talking about that. So
yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and the lot that I don't know right now. I just I honestly don't know a lot about that, so it'll be interesting for me to hear it, learn about it, like a little more than just they left.
Yeah, well, it's there's a lot of interesting stories and a lot of hearing, basically I'm reading about the same story from Ian Pace, Richie Blackmore, Ian Gillen, Roger Glover, Glenn Hughes, David Coverdale, all kind of telling these same intertwined stories, and then other people, third parties as well. So this is a lot of varying ideas of what happened and who's at fault, and everyone accepting none or all of the blame. So there's a lot going on. And it kind of, this album we're going to talk about today, Made in Japan, is unique in our sphere in that it's the only real live album we're going to discuss necessarily as part of this whole, what we agreed to do, which is the whole Mark 1, Mark 2, 3, 4, all those proper albums, and then branch out onto other things. We decided to leave this one in because it's so important to the band.
And just for clarification, Concerto doesn't, even though it's a live album, it doesn't really count in the same sense.
Exactly.
Because it was a live album full of original material. This is all, like I think you said last week, basically Machine Head.
Yeah, it's basically Machine Head with Child in Time and Strange Kind of Woman. So it's
yeah,
all
a couple of in rock songs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially the live Machine Head album. So, but it's not only that part, but it's also just its status in the rock world and the hard rock world as one of the most important live albums ever put out there, and it's hugely important to the history of the band too. This comes on the heels of Machine Head, and then also this was released a month before Who Do We Think We Are, which was the final Mark II album. So there's a lot going on with this, and it kind of paints a picture of where the band was at their peak, inspired a ton of other bands, and really recreated the kind of idea of what people think of as a live album. So there's a lot of stuff to get into. Like, as I said, to get into kind of the history of this album, Machine Head's original concept, like we talked about last week, was to be a studio album with a live performance after. So it was going to be like a double album. They put out the album, and then they're going to do a big performance at the casino of the album, and it would be a big double. You get to hear what it sounded like in the studio and what it sounded like live. That never ended up happening, but then it sort of did happen with Made in Japan. It was supposed to be only released in Japan. That was the first part of it. There was a lot. So at this time, basically, this was kind of new to me, but there was a lot of bootlegging going on of Deep Purple shows, and you could buy them in record stores. And one record store that was selling Deep Purple bootlegs was a record store I'm sure you've heard of, and that store is called Virgin Records, owned by Mr. Richard Branson. So he was just kind of shamelessly selling Deep Purple bootlegs. So he kind of built his empire, I guess, on these bootlegs that they were selling. And one of these bootlegs that came out was this thing called H-Bomb. Have you ever seen this?
No.
So this is the album cover. Can tell it's a bootleg. It looks like I drew it in fourth grade. So it's, for those of you listening, it's just a big letter H with like, I mean, you think for an H bomb, they could have drawn a better mushroom cloud. That's just like, it's like an H that looks like it was just, I don't know, in a, in a smoky room or something coming out, just kind of surrounded by clouds. It says bomb on the bottom and just deep purple. And that's it on a white background.
It looks like an afro.
It does kind of look like, it looks like a colon surrounding it.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's like, it looks like one of those, if you ever see those like probiotics that have like a picture of the colon drawn on them, that's what it looks like. So
what's the significance of H bomb? Do we know?
I have no idea. That's a good question. Something I should probably have an answer for, but this was a show that they did in Aachen, Germany, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I recently, they released it later in 2000, much later in 2001 as Space Volume 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Which I actually ended up tweeting about just a few days ago because it was the anniversary of when that was released in 2001. No, I'm sorry. It was the anniversary of when it was performed, July 11th, 1970. So that would have just been 4 days ago. So this was 1970, Aachen, Germany. And this performance was, it contained a 20-minute version of Ring Your Neck, Ring That Neck, and a 33-minute version of Mandrake Root. So,
Oof,
yeah, that's for the diehard fan.
a little out of control there.
Yeah, I've not listened to it yet. I do have a copy of the not this one, but the Space Volume 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted it on Twitter. Somebody immediately was like, "Hey, can you tweet out to your followers to see if anybody has a copy of H-Bomb they want to give me?" Because I guess this is like kind of the holy grail of the collector, this H-Bomb record. Getting a copy of that bootleg anyway. So they'd been bootlegged all over the place for years and years and years. And Roger Glover is quoted as saying in Sounds Magazine, "There's so many bootlegs of us going around. If we put out our own live set, it should kill their market." Well, that's clearly that's very optimistic thinking.
Yeah.
No diehard fan of any band is going to be satisfied with one live recording. They're going to want, every single,
all of them,
every date ever. So yeah, this was a big problem at the time. There was a big lawsuit with Richard Branson about selling these albums. Glover also talks about how live albums were kind of thought to be budget albums, like they weren't like serious albums that band put out. So they weren't like really serious about doing a live album. They didn't really think very highly of it. But there was a lot of pressure about to do it. The Japanese record company wanted to record it, and the band kept saying no. But then finally they kind of said, "Listen, we'll do it under 3 circumstances. 1, it only comes out in Japan. 2, if they don't like the material or the way it's recorded, they don't release it. And 3, they get to mix it and record it with their own engineer." So they agreed to this, and obviously we know the end of the story, which is that didn't happen. It didn't stay only in Japan.
Oh yeah, they broke one clause.
Yeah, one clause. So then enter the Wasp, Martin Birch, on the scene, is able to bring the mobile unit. I guess it was the Stones mobile unit still. It might have been something else, because I can't believe they're flying that thing from continent to continent. But yeah, so he came in and was able to record the band, but he's backstage. He has no eye contact with the band, doesn't know what's going on. He's just kind of plugging into the mixer and doing a recording. This album was a huge deal. It was a big hit in the United States as Made in Japan. Obviously, we all know it was released everywhere. At this point, Richie and Ian were not getting along off stage, but on stage, they have this great chemistry, and it shows through on the performance. It was a truly live album. There are no overdubs. I know there's like a lot of controversy around some other bands doing overdubs or doing other things on their live album, but there was none on this. Wasn't that like Kiss Alive? Didn't they do that? And it was like a big deal.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. I know that the like the crowd noise, of course, was was added in. Bombs, of course, they sweetened up a little bit with the explosions. There's a lot of talk about like they re-recording vocal parts, drum parts, bass parts. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's more obvious on a live too, but
Hmm.
because there were some songs that they didn't even perform in concert. They were like sound checks, and they basically added in crowd noise. But again, you wouldn't have known it until like years later when all this stuff came out. And I mean, honestly, it's just like if you've seen a live Deep Purple performance, like we were talking about earlier, like the Denmark video, it's just like they don't really need
No.
any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like it's cool to know that it's all live. Although, I mean, everybody knows that like basically all live albums are not truly live, but I guess it doesn't
Right.
really matter as long as they're entertaining and they sound cool.
Yeah, like I mean, you're buying what you're buying. Like who? I mean, if they're being like deceitful about it, if they're like, oh no, this is like totally live, there's no overdubs. If they're like lying about it, I could see being disappointed. But if they're
Yeah.
being open and honest about what they're doing, then who cares?
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that like Deep Purple is a good enough band musically, as we've seen and heard time and again, that this doesn't surprise me if it were truly a live album with all the flaws, if there are any left in.
Hmm.
Like we were saying before, John Lord could trip over his organ, and it would probably sound better than anything either one of us could do. So
Yeah, I could trip over the organ in exactly the same way, and it just wouldn't sound good. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Something
because you're not John Lord, you're not John Lord.
yeah, that's
That's why.
that probably has a lot to do with it. There is something magical about what he does, though. Um, so yeah, so they made a big point of being like there's no overdubs and all that.
Yeah.
So John and Roger both speak in interviews about how this is the band at the peak of their abilities, their best moments, their best time performing. And they said when they got back to England and actually listened to the tapes that they were really impressed, and they decided that they would put it out everywhere because they said, wow, people need to hear this. This is actually much better than we were expecting. In the United States, I guess it was accepted well, but people were more looking forward to the next studio album, the next live album. Next studio album recorded in the studio. So with that, we do need to, of course, do our traditional discussion of the album cover and artwork, which is actually more to talk about than you'd think. So really an iconic album cover. It's been copied a lot, parodied a lot and things like that, but it's a really great, simple cover.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I think of when I think of Deep Purple performing like at their peak. I remember
Bongos and
yeah, they're obviously in the middle of a jam, and it's very spontaneous. And I'm pretty sure that my dad had this album in his basement when I was younger, and I just remember looking at it and thinking back, I can like basically I was thinking this is the quintessential 70s band album cover. It's just stripped down, no frills, just a band rocking, just very like iconic 70s.
yeah. My dad didn't have any Deep Purple. He wasn't really into. He had like all the Beatles albums and a lot of the Stones albums.
Well, my dad didn't have much either. He had like one or two, like he didn't have like a ton of albums, but like I think this was the only Deep Purple album he had
Yeah,
at the time, because I would say like one Deep Purple album, one Aerosmith album, one Grand Funk album. It was like I think he just kind of bought whatever he liked. He wasn't into collecting everything from a band. But I do remember this one because I spent a lot of time staring at it and
yeah.
looking inside of it. And
Yeah, it's funny. My dad too. Like, yeah, it would just be like a weird. Like, he'd had like 4 or 5 Stones albums. He had like almost every Beatles album, and it was like he had like I think he'd had everything except the White Album. He just never had the White Album. So like growing up, I didn't know that album at all until I
yeah,
was like all the other Beatles stuff I grew up with, like from like 5, 6 year old. I was listening to that stuff, and then I didn't hear the White Album until I was like 12 or 13, and I was like, it's weird like hearing an album by a band you're so familiar with that you've never heard before. It's like, whoa, what is
yeah.
this? But it's weird like that. they wouldn't have collected all of them, but I guess they weren't obsessive freaks like us. So that's the album cover. Inside the gatefold, they got the rising sun. Kind of goes through side 1 and side 2. No, nothing fancy. Just talks about the track order, who's playing what instruments, crediting the Wasp, and kind of moving on. So one very interesting thing about the back cover is, in doing some research, that the front cover is from their performance in Japan. If you look at this image, this is not Japan. This is actually recorded in London, or photographed in London. So they used a picture from the show in London, which was at the Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you zoom in here, you can actually see Phil Collen from Def Leppard is in the front row there, watching Ritchie Blackmore play.
Where is he?
I can't really tell. But if you look, like, if you get really close, you might be able to see him. Oh, there he is. Sorry, I couldn't resist. It's a picture of Phil Collen all flexed out in the gym. I was doing a Google search to find if somebody had like circled who he is in the crowd or whatever, but nobody had. So I just put this picture of Phil Collen all flexed out, working out in the gym. Look at that guy. Good for him.
Yeah, that dude's ripped. How old is he? He's like,
I mean, he's got to be 60.
Like you said, good for him.
Yeah, good for him. I wish I looked that good 20 years ago.
I wouldn't. I wish I looked that good ever. I would never wear a shirt. I just go out
shirts.
whatever.
Just throw away all my shirts.
Like, oh, this is a black tie. I just put on a bow tie. Like, look like a Chippendale or something. Table for 2, please.
But so yeah, so this is the back cover again. Looks like Ian Gillan looks like he's like running away from a fire, and Ritchie Blackmore is standing there with a light shining between his guitar head and his face, so he's kind of like almost engulfed in this like purple light. And but in all seriousness, there's a lot of talk about Phil Collen being there. I don't know which person he is. I don't know if he's this guy right behind Ritchie's butt. I don't know if he's this guy over here. But Phil Collen, I've seen an interview with Phil Collen talking about it, about how the album came out, and he was just like, holy crap. Imagine like you get an album from one of your favorite bands and you're on the back cover.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a pretty big thrill for him. Then in Japan, this album was released as, it was called Live in Japan, because the joke about Made in Japan didn't really go over. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So there is a Deep Purple Live in Japan, Osaka, August 15th and 16th, Tokyo, August 17th, and shows the band on stage. From overhead, kind of pan back a little bit, and you can see the crowd, the audience there, kind of rocking out to the band. So
and this was a CD that came out later, right?
Well, it did come out on CD, but this was actually the album cover in Japan as well. Okay. And then they did release it as a CD too.
Okay, because this version I remember getting on a CD maybe sometime in the 90s, where it had all 3 nights.
Yes, I remember you getting that. So I think you know what, this might be this I believe, unless I'm mistaken, is the Japanese album cover, but I think they used it for that reissue. So yeah, you got to hear all the performances, even the ones that didn't make it onto the album, from all 3 nights.
Yeah.
So this is a kind of ad in the Melody Maker from December of 1972, talking about the album coming out. Shows Roger Glover playing bass, and Ian Gillan down there at the bottom. This is another ad from Melody Maker, Deep Purple, the Rising Sun thing, made in Japan in a very, stereotypical Japanese font. Special live double album for only £3.25. This is the first ever live recording of Deep Purple's incredible stage performance. We think it's the best live recording ever made. And quite possibly could have been at that point. And then one more ad here from the, it's proud to announce the representation of Deep Purple. Deep Purple's first double live album, Made in Japan, will be released December 8th on Purple Records. And it kind of just talks about this agency and who else they represent, including Uriah Heep, ELO, and some other bands. Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night. Another record my dad had, Three Dog Night. But that's the kind of the breakdown of the album cover. Some really good stuff. And I kind of think of that font, that Made in Japan font,
Mm-hmm.
as being like deep. You see it every so often being used, and I'm like always like, oh, it's Made in Japan. Like I can't disassociate that font with this album, you know.
Well, one thing that I kind of noticed, but I didn't say anything, I think it was last week, Deep Purple really didn't have a logo.
You're right.
There was like never one, like if you look at every album, it's always kind of like a different font, just like they never had like a unified, like Kiss always had a logo.
Yep.
For instance, other bands always had it, like theirs was like different every album, which I think is kind of, I don't know, kind of cool, kind of unique, because it's like it almost makes sense with how they were never really, I mean, they were cohesive, but you know what I mean? They're always kind of evolving.
Yeah.
Kind of. So it's like, I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool, but also unusual, because like every band had
Right.
a
Yeah.
logo.
It's kind of evolved into that logo they use now, which is that
Yeah.
70s font that they did use back then, but they didn't use it, like you said, they didn't use it regularly. Like
Yeah.
I've seen copies of Stormbringer that have that Deep Purple font on it, but I know the copy I have and like the original just says Deep Purple, like in a plain Arial font or whatever it is. And they used that font. They used this one on Made in Japan, and then they also used that like Shades of Deep Purple font in some things. But yeah, it did bounce around a lot, and more often than not at least on their original before the breakup covers, it's always just usually like Deep Purple or Deep Purple period in a very plain font. But it's interesting. So yeah, so that's a little breakdown. The Roger Glover once again designed the cover. Just featured a color photograph of the band, which is a really great band, and we talked about the back cover already. So the title of the album is a joke, Made in Japan, because at the time it was considered, if something was made in Japan, that it was like of low quality. So they were just kind of like, haha, we're gonna just Made in Japan, like this is like a throwaway thing for us. But I do want to, this always makes me think of one thing, which is that scene in Back to the Future 3 where he finds, do you know what I'm talking about?
Nah, I haven't seen it in a while, so you have to refresh.
It's like 20 seconds long, so I'm going to play it for you.
Okay.
So let me get this started here.
This little piece of junk could be such a big problem. No wonder this circuit failed. It says Made in Japan.
What do you mean, Doc? All the best stuff is made in Japan.
Unbelievable.
So it always just makes me think of that scene for some reason, which kind of illustrates the point. Like in the 50s, up through the, you know, even the early 70s, Made in Japan was a signal of low quality, and then of course by the mid 80s, you were not getting a tape deck or a CD player that was not made in Japan, because it was the best stuff. So
Exactly.
and that's how the album's aged. Made in Japan ended up being true of the album as well. So this was recorded, like we talked about, in 3 nights, August 15th and 16th in Osaka. The 15th show was considered to be the worst of the 3 nights. And they attributed it to kind of the band had just gotten in. They were still jet lagged. August 16th was considered to be the best of the 3 nights. And this is where most of the material from the album is from. And then the 17th was in Tokyo. It was considered also to be a really good performance, but the sound quality was a little worse. So they only used, I think, 1 of the Tokyo, two of the Tokyo recordings.
Right.
But most of it is from that August 16th night. And Smoke on the Water is the only one that uses the 15th. So, yeah, that's the kind of rundown of the album. You know, they finally getting their live presentation after recording Machine Head, and here we go. We can dive right into it because there's a lot of stuff on this album. It's not a hugely long album.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at how short it was in comparison to what I remembered.
And once again, it's 7 tracks. Every album that they've done, Mark II anyway, has been 7 tracks, and this doesn't break form. So this starts off with Highway Star. And they do kind of a little noodling on the organ before they kind of kick it in. And
Like how it starts with them politely clapping.
yes, you can tell the Japanese audience is a little more tame. And they wouldn't have really known these songs too well because the album was not super old at this point. They were really on tour promoting their new stuff. And I really feel like this is Highway Star in particular is just excellent.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can tell on just right out of the gate. It's like they sound like they do on the record.
This, yeah, like I found when I was listening to this album, I kept forgetting it was made in Japan. Like,
Yeah.
and, until I got to like the little breaks or the solos of it. Oh yeah, this is made in Japan because they're so tight.
Well, because they also don't do anything from Ian singing to the guitar playing to whatever. They don't do too much stuff on the albums that they can't replicate live.
Right, yeah, they're not putting in a lot of like studio trickery or anything. It's all, yeah, like the only thing they really did, and they only started to do in Machine Head, is double track some of Ian's vocals, but even the double tracking is very subtle. And Richie, John does that little chromatic run that he double tracks, and Richie does a couple of guitar harmonies, but for the most part, it's very, I don't want to say easy, but easy for them to replicate it live. Not easy for us.
Yeah.
And the tones and everything on the guitar and the organ and everything are just spot on. They're not losing anything. They're not sacrificing any tone. That just sounds like John's organ sounds exactly like it does on the record.
I mean, Ian Gillan too. He doesn't take the easy way out and let the crowd sing or try and sing a little bit lower or any of that stuff. He just still
He
belts
doesn't
it
point
out.
the mic at the audience and take a slug out of a Coors Light bottle. After he barks out a couple of vocals. Yeah, I mean, he puts in a lot of little flourish. They all do. Puts in a lot of little flourishes and new things, but doesn't cheap out it by any means.
Well, yeah, I mean, shows that he can do live what he does on the albums. It's not just all of them, really.
Yeah. So they mix it up a little bit in this one. It's a little bit longer than the a little bit longer than the album version.
Really impressed with the way they recorded it, too. It sounds really good.
Yeah, the Wasp doesn't mess around. And to think that just like they came into this cold, they flew before this. They flew to Hawaii and then they flew to Japan, unload all their stuff, get everything ready, do a show, jet lagged, and they're just like, Ian's voice sounds fantastic right out the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Ian Gillan doesn't strike me as somebody spending a lot of time like doing scales in the back room. He's just like smoking half a pack of cigarettes and then drinking half a bottle of tequila, then getting up there and belting it out. Although I don't know if you drink as much tequila back then. Maybe save that for his Black Sabbath days. Richie's playing on this is great. And even at the end, you can hear him. It's not quite as clean as the album version, the end of the solo, but it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, but that's Richie. He just does whatever he wants.
Exactly.
If he's feeling clean one night, he'll go for it. If he's feeling down and dirty, he'll play that way.
Sometimes he just messes things up on purpose to screw with people, as we'll see in a couple songs.
I love that.
You can hear it's a little sloppier than the original, but yeah, great performance of the solo. Oh, no, he's dragging the guitar across the amp or something. I really noticed too on this album too his like use of the whammy bar, just like really, like like just like he really abuses that thing. I wonder if he ever snapped the bridge out of any of his guitars from doing that.
He must have.
Probably. He was no stranger to breaking the odd guitar after the show. I was reading a story about how he used to like break a guitar at the end of the show. He'd have like a cheap guitar backstage that they'd kind of hand him, and he'd play it, and then he'd break it and everything. But one night he accidentally broke one of his good guitars.
Oh no! I wouldn't want to be around him after that show.
No, I forgot where I was reading that, but it was like one of his really good strats. Like he ended up smashing it, thinking it was a cheap one. What does he say there? He's like, yes, I am, you mothers, or something.
Something really 70s. I love that. I love it when Ian Pace does that. He ends a song like that.
That's great.
That's
So,
like
yeah,
classic Ian Pace right there.
So I guess we're ranking these, even though we kind of did the album versions already, but
Hey, you know what? I didn't even think of that
yeah, I totally forgot that we're ranking these things.
because I'm unprepared. So
And I put a little note in the rankings, which you probably haven't seen yet, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with holding my rankings until the show,
okay.
as to not A, so that we don't influence each other, and B, to kind of like, because I feel like there's going to be more surprises coming up. There's one thing in particular I think that's going to be a big surprise, and I think it would be good to kind of talk about that rather than, getting a text being like, "What are you doing rating this song like this?" Like save it for the show, or it can kind of be like, "Oh my god," because for the most part we've been pretty much within a half a point of each other, and
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see when we start veering off a little more.
Of course.
So do you have the ratings?
Yeah, I'm doing mine now.
You're rating them now. Well,
I'm rating her.
you could just do it after the song. After you listen to it, you can just be like, "Well, this is what I'm feeling." And I think it'll be better too, because I sometimes am listening to the song during the show, and I think, "Oh, now I want to change my mind a little bit. I want to just make my decisions right in the moment."
Yeah, but anyways, Highway Star. I actually don't look at yours beforehand. I usually am like frantically rating like at the last minute, like I am now. So it's like,
Well, now we can just do it in the moment. We can just be like, you know what? I'm going to give that one whatever. What did I give? Did I give this one four?
You give it four hats. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I agree. 4 hats. 4 hats for me too. 8 hats.
Four
So-
hats, a total of 8 hats for Highway Star Made in Japan version. Osaka,
great.
August 16th. When you'll tell when we revisit this, and we cover the album where they do all 3 nights, when we're really running out of material. Although
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff we could do before that. I've been keeping a running list of ideas for shows that we could do,
Yeah.
and I've got probably like a good 20-25 show ideas already outside of just albums, not even including albums, which there's hundreds. So
Of course. So
okay,
yeah,
so
so that's
total of 8.
yeah. So I mean, I think that's a pretty solid opener. I like the way that it opens the album. I like the crowd noise, the way it fades in with John Lord, like you said, kind of giving that little soft intro, and I like how it's kind of sloppy, the solo a little bit, and how it's not exactly the same as the album, but it's still faithful to the album. That's what I like about a lot of their performances, is even when they do jam, it's like they still, I don't know, I just think it's because they're such a live band and they recorded so live, like that you're not getting something completely different or overproduced or something when you're listening to the album, and then you hear them live and you're like, is this even the same band? So
Right, there's a lot of live performances like that, like you see like the playing is just not there, the singer maybe just can't handle it live, and you see that a lot with like disappointing live performances, and man, Deep Purple in 1972 was not giving those out. It's just really, really solid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, keeping it interesting and mixing things up. So.
Oh, always, yeah.
And as we go into the next song, so this is a beast of a song, Child in Time. Starts out very very subtle here. This is it's about a little over 2 minutes longer than the album version.
Mm-hmm. Is it still playing?
Yep. Do you hear it?
No, I lost audio.
Is it maybe just quiet?
There we go. I got it.
There's a lot of dynamics in the song. So the opening with just Ian Pace tinkling on the cymbals.
Tinkling.
This was from this was from the same night as Highway Star, August 16th in Osaka. And we talked about this on our In Rock episode, but this is a song I always think of live more so than the album version. And I warmed up, I think, a little bit more to the album version, but to me, this is just a song that really benefits from being played live.
Mm. No, yeah, totally.
And I'd have to listen to it again, but I think the Denmark version of this I might even prefer to this one.
Yeah, this is definitely a really great live song.
It might just be my memory too of watching that and having that. I'd heard the song a few times by that point, but when I first saw that, I was really like blown away.
And this song being so great live is really kind of crazy, thinking that, like we were talking about overproduced bands, stuff like that, any other vocalist would not be able to do this live every night.
No, and Ian Gillan couldn't even do it live until a certain point. I don't know when the actual point he stopped doing it was, but at a certain point he couldn't sing it anymore.
Yeah, but still, even the fact that he went out, he wasn't just like, guys, like just in the studio, I can't.
Exactly. He did it live for a long time.
Yeah.
And this really shows the early kind of Blackmore. I find it coming from Blackmore, that kind of dynamic build of the songs, and he does it. The California Jam version of Mistreated is just like, oh my God. There's over 250,000 people in the audience, and you can hear a pin drop when he's doing those guitar solos.
Yeah. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to sing this along to this in the car.
What are you, crazy?
And it's funny, it's like I can technically hit the notes. It sounds terrible. But, it's like I can like, I can like get like, but then I'm like I did it like just through this part, and I was like, my throat was like on fire, and I'm like, how did he do this every time?
They're like my larynx.
I know, it actually like legitimately hurt. Like my throat was sore. I know, that's my greatest lament, is I'm really good at like, I can sing really high. I'm just no good. It just sounds bad.
Oh man.
Great organ solo. And they definitely do a different like groove during the breakdown in the middle here. I don't know if Ian's got the congas out yet, but. And he kind of switches the organ up to more of like kind of like a jazzy, percussive organ.
Yeah, this is really great.
Bum, 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 bum. It's very this is where it kind of differs a bit from the album. He almost does Lazy there for a second.
He is doing Lazy, that crazy guy.
So there's a lot of ad-libbing later on in the song by Gillan.
Yeah.
He kind of throws in a lot of words there that I was reading some speculation on what they might mean. Well, one of them he just says, "I want to be inside you." It's not really nothing to speculate there.
Well, I think we all know what that means.
It's funny because he's just like talking this song that's supposed to be about, isn't it about like mankind destroying itself and all this stuff, and he's like, "I want to be inside you." He can't help himself.
Well, speaking of which, do you remember California Jam, where Coverdale was singing Highway Star? And he said, instead of big black tires, he said big black tits.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I remember that. So that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes these guys, even in different versions of Deep Purple, just take these weird liberties with the lyrics.
In certain ways, Coverdale was a perfect replacement for Gillan. Same, just like absolutely out of control sex drive. Although probably took it to the next level. Even Gillan would be like, "Whoa, enough with that mic stand."
But back to this version of Deep Purple, which is really kicking ass right now.
Oh yeah, what a great.
I mean, just whatever groove they get into, it's like you just don't get tired of listening to it. It's so good.
And it's so uniquely Deep Purple, you know? Other bands didn't... I mean, there are plenty of other bands that have extended jams, but they don't sound like this. Between, like, John Lord throwing in some, like, Bach fugue-sounding things in the background, and Ian Gillan, or Ritchie Blackmore doing his, like, pseudo-classical sort of thing. You know, Glover just holding it down, the congas, Ian Pace being Ian Pace. It's just such great chemistry. Too bad that they kind of hated each other.
Yeah, too bad we couldn't have gotten like a lot more albums out of them, like around in the 70s together.
And it's a shame. I was doing a lot of reading about the breakup too, which we'll probably get into in great detail next week, but I find even on this recording, like listening to it in the car, like it's almost too quiet. You can almost not hear it. But yeah, it's a shame that more wasn't done to try to keep this band together at this point. Because it sounds like, looking back in retrospect, the fixes are pretty simple. Probably wouldn't have lasted forever, but I mean, God, they were only together for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much history and everything behind each album in such a short amount of time. Like I said before, like when we get to later albums, there's not going to be that much like intrigue behind the recording of Abandon or whatever. You know, it's going to be like, you know, there's not going to be so many iconic moments.
Yeah.
So here we are at the 8.5 minute mark. Ian Gillan comes back in on vocals.
After presumably playing the bongos for several minutes.
And he was a percussionist and a drummer first, and then
yes,
he had to make the choice between singing and drumming, and
luckily he made the choice to sing.
I think he said in his book too, he was like, I thought I'd get a better chance of getting laid if I was a singer or something. Sounds typical.
Coverdale would be proud.
And it's also true. I mean, if you just want to get down to it, but yeah, Coverdale would be very proud. He just throws that in there. Like, why did he do that?
He's like, we're in Japan. They won't know what I'm saying.
Oh, wait. Did he say something here, too? There's a part where he talks about only being 4'6".
No, that's like at the outro jam
Yeah.
part.
It's also bold to do this as the second song in the set, knowing you have to sing 5 more songs.
Yeah, they probably could have closed out with this song.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a great closer. It's funny they never seemed to do that, though. And at this point, we're only about a minute longer than the studio version, so when you consider how that one ended, it's not too crazy. It's just that kind of outro part that puts it over the edge.
Yeah.
This here is essentially where the studio version would end in another 20 or 30 seconds. But there he is. So yeah, so he just said, you're only about 4'6", but don't worry about it. There's always somebody smaller than you. There's always somebody a million stone heavier than you. So I was reading that they thought that this remark was meant to reference Ronnie James Dio, because Elf was opening for them at this point.
Yeah.
So they thought, you know, he was kind of ribbing Ronnie for being so short. I don't know if it's true, but it's possible. I don't know what the hell else it would mean.
Well, all I know is this. If I could go back in time, I would see Elf opening for Deep Purple.
Oh,
that would be
God.
Could you imagine?
Whew. That would be incredible.
I think he does this kind of somebody smaller than you, always somebody bigger than you spiel in the Denmark show too, and it's a little more legible, or you can hear it better.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in years.
And I think, if I can remember right, I just remember thinking like, oh, it's one of those kind of 70s peace man type of things that like everybody threw in there, and it was something like, oh, there's always somebody shorter, and if you're this tall, there's always somebody bigger. So just like live in the middle and chill out, man, or something like that. It was like one of those type of things, which he probably
nonsense.
Yeah, hippie, pretty much like hippie-ish nonsense. Yeah, I mean, at least that's what it sounded like to me. Although, like at this point, like you said, maybe it was just like, hey, look at that guy, you know, like when he's
So I mean, it could be. I mean, like I said, I've been reading lots of different things about it. That was just one of the books mentioned that. I don't even remember which one now.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be funny if he was poking fun at Dio. It's just amazing to think of Dio opening for Deep Purple. I mean, God, what a ticket!
Yeah, holy cow!
I guess, yeah. If I had a time machine only for rock and roll use, that would be a good use of it. But I gotta say, I would probably use it to go back in time and see the Butterfly Ball live performance at the Albert Hall, because it just had everybody. I mean, everybody was there: Glenn Hughes, David Coverdale, Ian Gillan. The only person that wasn't there was Dio, because he couldn't make it because he was on tour with Rainbow. Yeah. But everyone else from the album is there, and to cover Ronnie's parts, they bring in Ian Gillan, so not exactly a terrible compromise.
No, not at all.
And you're seeing everyone playing. You're seeing John Lord, Tony Ashton, Eddie Hardin's there, Ray Fenwick. I mean, it's just wow. That would have been a show. And it's recorded, but unfortunately, they recorded a lot of people dressed in animal suits over it, so you can only see parts of it.
More hippie nonsense.
Well, that was more. I don't even know what kind of nonsense that was.
Acidy nonsense.
Perhaps. Okay, so Child in Time. I think I gave this one 4.5.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
I had to have, because it's a really, really good one.
Where are we here? There we are. Yes, you did.
Awesome.
Yes, you did. And I gave it my usual 4.
You gave it a 4. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's great. Not too great. Not as great as you, obviously. No, I have no problem with it. I think it's an awesome live version. I just love hearing this song and not hearing any, like, I love hearing live albums and the vocalist not messing it up,
Hmm. Oh yeah,
or even live performances. So
because sometimes a vocalist can even mess up their own songs. Never mind when they're singing somebody else's, but they can. I don't want to say mess up, but they get like little things in the rhythm off, and it kind of like they'll just decide they're tired of singing it the way that it was on the album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm very like, when if it's that way, if that's the rhythm on the album, Ian Gillan always delivers it exactly the same way, and it's maybe that's boring, but like if you were like, "Ooh, sweet child in time," you know, if you're like jumping all over, I'd be like, "No, man, that's not." All I can think of when they do that is that's not the way it goes.
yeah, I guess if you're William Shatner singing it, then
Yeah. Oh, sweet child in time. Or Christopher
No.
Walken or something.
no, thank God, no.
It's one he didn't butcher, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we've got a little ditty called "Smoke on the Water."
Tells the story of how we recorded it and what went wrong when we did it. Happened in Switzerland. The song's thing called "Smoke on the Water."
It's funny because he introduces it and nobody claps because it's new.
Here we go. Oh, Richard, what are you doing?
So he just did this every night, like he liked to screw with people, I think. But this is such a new song that everyone's just kind of clapping, like, what's going on? Because they don't. At this point, this song is not the legendary song that it is now.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just like to think like that Richie's just being a dick. Like, I'm Richie. I can play it any way I want.
Well, they left it on the album, so it's clearly like it's an intentional little. Everything
Yeah.
I've read is like he would just kind of like do it like. At first, I know the first time I heard it, I thought it was a screw up, but
Yeah.
he's just doing it. I think he's just bored of playing the riff. Even if
I love how John Lord's organ sounds on this.
Yeah, it sounds great. And the bass is thundering when it comes in.
Well, I mean, that's all kidding aside, though. I like how spontaneous Richie was. I mean, if he wanted to mess around with the riff a little bit in concert, he would.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that made these guys so good.
Yeah, and sometimes he's playing a guitar solo and he just decides, oh, I'm going to like play it like this over the fretboard, or I'm going to rub it on my back like a back scratcher or whatever, and just like that's what he was in the mood for, I guess.
Yeah, which is cool.
So this recording is from Osaka on August 15th, the first show. This is the only song from the first show, which was considered to be the weakest of the three shows.
Oh, okay.
And I guess they said the August 16th recording's opening riff, where he did that thing we heard earlier, was too crazy, and the record companies didn't want it. I don't know why they didn't just leave it off. They could have just cut the intro off. But it's interesting that Ian Gillan announces the song. He goes, "Hey guys," Deep Purple comes out in front of a huge crowd and is like, "Hey guys, we're gonna do Smoke on the Water," and everyone's like, "Okay," because like that would like receive a standing ovation like just merely a year later. Everyone would be like, "Yeah!" Well, and it would probably be an encore by that point too.
Yeah.
There's a funny little documentary about Made in Japan, but it's weird because it covers like pre-Made in Japan and after Made in Japan. It's Glenn Hughes is in it, and Blackmore is like sitting there and like dressed in like a velvet like suit with like his little mustache and like playing. He's like holding an acoustic guitar during the interview, and he talks about. He's like, originally I'd written Smoke on the Water to be a very medieval song, and he plays like the riff and he starts playing all these like medieval like little like licks in between the chords, and he's like, the band didn't like that, so I went back to the way they wanted it with just the chords. But I am 95% sure he's full of crap. Like I think it's very hard to tell when he's joking. He's so deadpan.
Yeah.
It sounds the way he plays it sounds like this is a Blackmore Night song, not a Deep Purple song. So I think he was just messing with the interviewer. But
Yeah.
it's funny that they put that on the on the documentary. I love how he leaves that little ending part into the solo. So this song's about a minute longer than the album version. Yeah, you're right about that organ tone. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a little like kind of higher energy version, I feel, of Smoke on the Water.
Like than the album version, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the album version's a little. I guess they were just worried about the cops closing them down.
Well, I mean, by virtue of it being live, too, of course, it's going to have a little more energy than the studio recording.
Sure.
But the studio recording is also, like, way overplayed at this point, so...
Yeah, like hearing anything. I actually stumbled across a live performance of them from just a few years back, maybe 2012, where they're on like some TV station. I can't remember what country they were in, but they did a completely jazz version of the song, and it's with Don Airey and Steve Morse and everything. It was actually really good, and Ian Gillan sang it like a jazz singer, and I just found it this morning. I think I was looking around, and it's great. And it's
cool.
hearing the song, you're like, wow, because it's like you've heard other bands cover songs in like different styles. Like there's that, like that bluegrass Black Sabbath album,
Yeah.
which is really cool. But to hear the actual band do it with a completely different feel, and Steve Morse has got that really jazzy feel to it. It was really good.
I like how this ends.
He
Oh,
loves
yeah.
that.
Sounds way better than in Shades of Deep Purple.
That is
Because that's a guitar line that he does a lot, but it's like...
yeah. He
It's-
just does that like chromatic. Yeah.
Yeah, they... But of course, it sounded a million times better here.
Yeah. Booker Tellison would have been like,
Louder than everything else. Right.
"Oh, do you hear that?" He says,
Yep. Everything louder than everything else. The
Everything
famous
louder than
line.
everything else.
Yes, the famous line. Make it loud. Everything he wants, everything louder than everyone else. He's repeating what Richie's saying. Ian Gillan's just asking for the monitors to be turned up or whatever, and Blackmore's kind of like joking with him that everything has to be louder than everyone else. So cool. Smoke on the Water live. What's our ratings?
4 and 4.
4 across the board. Sounds fair to me.
Yep, because it's just a great version of the song.
Okay, then here we go.
Interestingly, I
What's
think it's interestingly the Mule.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Mule is really like, when I saw this for the first time, I thought like, that's a weird choice. I don't know why. It's just, I feel like it. Yeah, I just feel like, I mean, I know why they put it in because of Ian's drum solo and because it's a centerpiece for him. But to me, I just like feel like it doesn't fit in with these other songs. I don't know why.
Yeah,
As well, I mean, as well.
yeah, I agree. But here it is, the mule.
You're like, here it is anyway.
Here it is. I can't do anything about that. It's already been recording. So this one was the first of the 2 Tokyo shows included from August 7th. Ian's kind of, or Richie's kind of strangling his guitar there a little. He's just kind of like really exaggerating that little trill part.
He's strangling his guitar.
So again, they didn't think this was as good a sound quality, but they really preferred this performance. Performed this preference and preferred this performance. Ian Pace just going wild with that drum riff in the background.
Yeah, you can tell he's cutting more loose. He's a little looser with it on the live version.
Yep. Again, I talked about this is not my favorite song of all, as it's a bit repetitive.
I also feel like on this song, like Ian's vocals are mixed a little low.
Yeah. I can see what they're saying with the sound quality. But the thing I like about this performance is they only do that repetitive part for about a minute and a half. And then they break away from it and go into the drum solo. So it's like, the thing I really was annoyed about in the Fireball version is it just goes on. I don't know how long the song is, 4 or 5 minutes, but it's 5 minutes of listening to that same boom, ba, doo-ga-doo-goo-ga-doo, and it just never ends. But here you get a drum solo, which drum solos are not always the favorite of people listening to live shows, and you don't see them as much anymore. In the 70s, they were kind of a popular thing.
Yeah.
But Ian Pace's drum solos always keep me entertained. And I think about that Denmark show again, where he does that incredible drum solo, which might even be better than this one.
I think it was, and I think it's more to like, I like to see Ian Pace playing more than I like to hear him playing. So
Yeah.
When I was listening to this at first, I was thinking drum solo really, I mean, of course, Ian's great, but it's like I'd rather see a video of him doing this than just hearing it. I mean, drum solos are just kind of like, man, whatever to me.
Yeah. So this one goes on for a bit. Should we skip through the drum solo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any particular notes or favorite parts about this drum solo.
Yeah, if this was a drumming podcast, maybe we could talk a little bit more about his paradiddles, but
I really don't know anything about drums either.
There is one really cool part though that I want to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't know where the heck it is though. He always brings in that, like, the hi-hat, just keeps the time with the hi-hat while he's going nuts. The snare work is great. I don't want to jump ahead and miss it, but where is it? Let's see. It's not this. He does this all the time, but maybe it's after this part.
I mean, no doubt he's like razor sharp, like precision, great drummer.
He's doing this with a single bass drum too. You know, that's pretty crazy. This part right here, I love. Everybody in the audience clapping, trying to mess him up. Come on, man. He's trying to speed up and slow down, and you guys are trying to clap along.
Oh man.
I just like that stop he does with the kick drum and the toms. Doom, tap, tap, and then he just brings it up to this feverish pace, just bringing in those cool grooves rather than just like running down across the toms as fast as he could. I think was a really nice touch that he always threw into his drum solos. Then you get like Tommy Lee in the 80s who would take this to the next level and spin upside down doing his drum solos over the crowd.
Oh yeah.
I think he's coming out of it now. Or maybe that's wishful thinking.
Nope.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that too. Even with the guitar, like hearing just like an endless guitar solo, like seeing it, I find much more entertaining.
Yeah, I remember just like watching him, the Denmark show, and being like, damn.
Yeah, I remember that being the most entertained I've ever been by a drum solo the first time I saw that. And I remember taking it after, I think you made me a copy of it. And I brought it back and played it for our friend Dave, who was the drummer. And just seeing him stare at it slack-jawed as we hung out watching that at my parents' house.
But I mean, you're not talking about a huge kit or anything, a flashy stage show or anything. You're just talking about great musicians.
No, he's got a 4-piece set. And they come in with this little blues thing here.
A little 50s kind of flair to it. And then they go somewhere dark with it.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's not what you're expecting.
So Deep Purple.
Right back into the mule. But yeah, talking about his kit, he's playing a 4-piece kit. Got a kick, snare, one tom, and a floor tom. And he's got a ride, a crash, and a hi-hat. I mean, I'm looking at the album cover, that's all I see.
I think it would have been fun if he had a splash cymbal. That was always my favorite. You hated that I loved that so much.
I always like the splash.
No, I remember when we were recording our album, me and Eric's. Like, I wanted Dave to like liberally use the splash cymbal, and it would piss you off so bad. I don't know. Just remember, you're like, damn it,
The damn splash. I like it. At this era, though, they would have been like the traditional for the drummer to have a giant gong behind him, which is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I think Zeppelin did that. I think Pink Floyd did that.
Kiss did. Peter Criss did in the early days.
What are you doing? You don't need a gong. Give me a break. That's ridiculous.
That's great for effect, you know?
I mean, I guess for decoration it looks cool, but yeah. So that I really prefer that version of the mule because the mule parts are much less.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a fan of that song, but it's a great drum solo. I mean, it's a vehicle for a drum solo, and it works really well. And I feel like breaking up the mule with anything in the middle just makes it a more palatable song.
Yes. So you gave it a 4. I actually gave it 3.5.
Ah, I think that's a reverse of what we did on the actual album, isn't it?
Let me see.
I think on the album I gave it a 3.5 and you gave it a 4.
Let me see. The Mule. No, I gave it a 3.5 and you gave it a 3.
Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. But you still liked the album version more than I did, and I like the live version more than you do. So.
Yes. And I only deducted some points because I like, not just because the drum solo, which was really good, was kind of long and not my thing. Like, I don't want to put this on and listen to it, but also because the song in general just sounded a little thin. Ian's vocals were a little bit low in the mix. And it's just, I feel it's a song where I like the album version a lot because for the same reason you didn't like it, is because I liked the tightness and the the drum beat and it being like the repetition of it. I just thought that it added to it. And then when they like really amped it up at the end with like putting all the reverb and everything on it to make it just sound like really chaotic and everything, I saw a purpose to it, which is, so I guess basically the stuff that annoyed you about the album version, I really liked about it. And that's why I didn't really love at least this version didn't translate well, I don't think, to the album, because I've heard the Mule live in some of these early shows, and I know that it sounds good live, but I don't really care for this one as much.
I think it's hard listening to just one instrument too. Like, there's a big difference between Richie doing a solo with the whole band and then Richie just playing guitar. Like, you know, that's, even as a musician and someone who loves this stuff, sometimes that's a little much. You know, I can think of some really good ones, like Randy Rhoads' solo on Tribute is incredible, just him with no backup. But, you know, for the most part, like I find the interplay between the musicians, even if one of them is in the process of soloing, is more enjoyable to listen to than just somebody going wild on their instrument, you know. And if, you know, you've got a guitar shredder just shredding, that's impressive for 30 seconds or a minute, but then it gets boring if there's nothing else musically going on.
Right.
So, okay, next up, we've got Strange Kind of Woman.
Prostitute.
Prostitute, exactly.
AKA prostitute.
The subtle lyricist and song title writer. So this again was from Osaka on August 16th, and you can definitely hear an improvement in the sound quality.
Yeah.
This is another one though, you know, I can't remember the exact length of the album version, but this version, 9 and almost 10 minutes. And I don't think we're going to be able to do all of Space Trucking.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Because this was, as we talked about, this was a double album, and Space Trucking was the entire second side of the second record.
I think that this translates great live.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I think we both know why we love the live version, because of the Richie and Ian interplay after the solo.
And it's great because they only would have just started doing that, and it's something they resurrected when they got back together in the 80s and had just as much fun with it, it sounded like. It's also the thought of doing that with somebody you hate. Like, they hate each other at this point, and they're just, you know, it sounds like they're just having so much fun. But yeah, Ian's vocals once again are just stellar on this. And it's this is another one where I almost forget I'm listening to the live album.
Well, the thing that I liked about when they did the thing that they're about to do, when they go,
Yeah.
it's like, I always liked it because I always felt like Richie and Ian were trying to trick each other or throw each other off.
Yep.
You know, because you go, and then I just picture Richie going, "You mother."
He hesitates before he hits those notes, but it's incredible how well they both do. I mean, I feel like Ian Gillan has an easier job than Richie in that respect. But they both do a great job matching those notes.
But I mean, it's a great call and response, back and forth, you know, matching each other type of thing. Like, it's really, I don't know, it says a lot. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not just them doing that. It's like it's a whole attitude. It's kind of like, you see them like relating to each other. It's like, it's just, I don't know, it's one of the coolest things about their live show.
Or relating to each other, or trying to mess each other up, or hating.
Or fighting each other, or just like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like, you just see the two of them interacting in a different way than like 5 musicians on stage.
Right.
I love how we're talking about it. It hasn't even happened yet.
This part, is this part where he messes up the lyrics a bit? I mean, yeah, here. Maybe it's after the solos. 'Cause he starts laughing and it's right there. It's great because it's great that they weren't such perfectionists. They were just like, you know what, he messed up the lyrics and he laughed about it, but we're just gonna leave that on the album because it's fun.
Yeah, why not?
Reminds me of that Playboy video we watched where Richie Blackmore is like playing that Hush and he like messes it up and he looks at Ian Pace and he's just like, eh. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, Richie and his giant bouffant just went, oh well.
Listening to his Bulgarian radio and his bouffant before he covered it with the pilgrim hat. Really good soloing here.
Here we go.
The breakdown, which we've been talking about the entire song, it finally happens. See Richie just looking over at him like, come on, man. All right.
So good.
See, Ian Gill's like, nah, I'm not doing that one.
And she's like, nope.
And he just, every so often he boycotts one. He's like, nah, I'm not doing that one. That was pretty good. Whatever. Ian almost sounds like a guitar right there.
Oh, that's so good. I could listen to that all day.
Pretty great. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Oh, here it is. It's coming up. It's like probably one of the most impressive things I've ever heard on record. Jesus.
definitely different from the album version there. Kind of more of a soulful sort of thing he does on the album, and here he just screams his head off. Like, Richie, we got two more, or Ian, we got 2 more songs and then an encore, man. Save something.
I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, like,
I mean, his voice was like perfect the whole time.
yeah, I mean, he's just unparalleled. He's so good.
I got like goosebumps listening to it.
Yeah. Here he ramps it up. So now he, I think.
I think it's lazy. Guys, what did we call this song?
Yeah, I don't want to commit to anything in case I'm wrong, but it might be called Lazy. But yeah, so they're gonna go into Lazy in a minute.
Oof.
That's a
Oof.
one. So what was your ranking for Strange Kind of Woman Made in Japan version live?
4.5, baby.
Mm.
I was damn near close to giving it a 5.
Ooh.
Um,
What did I give it?
4.
4. Hmm.
You want to change that, Buster?
Let's do it. 4.5.
Yeah, you want to change that.
You've convinced me. Yeah, I'm listening to it again.
I mean, God, I probably want to give it like a 5 just based on Ian's vocals at the end, where he just held that note, and it was just like his voice didn't crack, nothing. My goodness.
Yeah, and it's a perfect representation of what they were doing live at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the 20-minute version of Space Truckin', which is fine, but but I think you get a little bit more of a concise look at to how do they transformed one of their live songs in a more delicate way. Space Trucking doesn't necessarily have to be 20 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, they perfected a lot of that stuff with their 20 and 30-minute versions of Mandrake Root and all that. So they kind of were used to all these extended jams, and they kind of replaced those with the Space Truckin' one.
Yeah.
And they were even still doing that on California Jam, weren't they? They did a really extended version on that as well.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. And on to the next song.
Yeah, Lazy.
Lazy. This is
I think it's called Lazy, this one.
I think I want to say this is called Lazy. If I can find it here. This was Tokyo, August 17th, the only other song from Tokyo, so might see a little bit of a dip in sound quality. It's like I have no idea what John's doing on the organ there.
Like 2001 Space Odyssey stuff.
It might even be like one of the synths he's using at that point. It's hard to tell with him what the heck he's doing. That's got to be a synth, yeah. It's like an analog synth. Unless he's got his organ hooked up to some sort of like crazy effect. I think it's an organ.
Yeah.
I'm just staring in that picture of him in the tank top, looking all sweaty, trying to figure out what he's doing. Just
Oh,
I've talked
nice.
about it before about how he just switches gears like that.
He was the master.
I've watched him do it and like pulling all his drawbars. I have no idea how you make an organ do that.
Oh, so whimsical.
It's kind of a Pesach and Lord kind of sound going on there. Not surprising because 2/3 of them are playing right now. That's kind of a dun 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 dun. What's that jazz song? Trying to think of what he was doing there. Really know how to ramp it up. And here they are. It's like 3 minutes into the song. They haven't even like laid into the riff yet. There he goes. I like how they do it. Most other bands would just come in really hard with that, but they just do a really soft,
Oh yeah.
little soft version of the lick. How John and Richie are just locked in on that riff too. Takes 4 minutes, now the band's kicking in. This kind of has a Green Bullfrog vibe to it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So there's a they didn't record like any of the video for this, but somebody I guess had a handheld recorder on one of the shows, the Tokyo show, so they're able to kind of sync up the video to the audio from the album for some of these songs. And on one of the
Nice.
documentaries they have, I think there's about 40 minutes of total video that they shot. And so you do get, it's just like one camera, but you do get some video from this show.
Oh, that's pretty neat. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was any video from this at all.
And I don't think it was, I think it was somebody holding like an 8mm. I think it's like a just video only, but they were able to sync it up so you can kind of see what they're doing. And it's just the Tokyo show that they have that for. It's just funny to think of like back then, like some of the things you see, like they record over masters of albums because they need the tape to use it again, and
Ugh.
stuff that you can't even fathom now given the basically unlimited amount of storage space we have for stuff.
I know. Blasphemy.
And the thought that a band would record this album and not record video too is crazy. Almost 6 minutes in, the vocals come in. And the harmonica coming in is pretty awesome. I was reading the book by Steve Pilkington about, he has a song, I've quoted from him before in some of the other episodes, but he writes about each song and all of the Deep Purple and all the Rainbow albums, and he hates this harmonica so much. I don't know, he just really hates harmonica. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. He's just like, oh, this god-awful harmonica. I can't believe he did it on the album, and I can't believe you ruined this great performance by putting in the harmonica. I think it's the only song he plays harmonica on in all Deep Purple.
Yeah, I think so. At least early Deep Purple.
Yeah, he might do something later. It's like intellectually, I know that Ian Gillan plays instruments, like he can play keys and guitar and all that, and drums and percussion. But I always think of him as only a vocalist, and every so often he'll remind you that he's got all these other great facets.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
This is a song that's really designed to be played live too.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it benefits from the live performance. Again, I don't know that Space Truckin' needs the long jam, but Lazy, Strange Kind of Woman to a degree, Child in Time. That sounds like the concerto there. Expect to see a violin player behind him smirking, waggling his eyebrows. This is great.
Oh my goodness. And they love it.
And then he just goes back in. It's almost like, yeah, we're gonna end it on that, and they're like, oh, it just doesn't feel right. It was a little goofy, a little too whimsical. Let's bring it back to the blues riff, and then they all just come back in. Ian busts out the harmonica. Let's save this thing.
I love how they do that kind of goofy, whimsical stuff. They'll throw it in sometimes. Makes it fun.
It's great. It's really good. It's like that. Oh,
That was awesome.
that's really good. And then just go into this blues breakdown. I mean, look at that. It's no wonder people wanted to bootleg their shows.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, when you're a big, hey, it's like, oh, I like Deep Purple. I've heard some of their albums. Let's go see them live. You go see them live, and you say, "Holy crap!"
I want to see. I want to hear it live again.
Yeah, people have to hear this. People have to be a part of this. It's just such a good performance. It's such cool things. It can't be limited to just to the studio albums. Yeah, that's great. What are the rankings here?
Yeah, that's right. I almost forgot. Strange Kind of Woman. No, wait. Lazy. Yeah. Lazy. 4 and 4.
4 and 4. I think that's fair. I could almost, just that ending part, I can almost be convinced to go 4.5, but I think we'll stay at 4.4. 4.0.
4.0. Yeah.
4.0. All right. That leaves us with only one track. Unfortunately, it's 20 minutes long, but again, I don't think we're going to tackle this whole
We
thing.
probably won't. Yeah, and probably not the whole
We
thing.
can skip the middle 15 minutes probably. But Space Truckin'. It's funny to think that they'd only have 7 songs on an album. They'd only really play 7 songs in their set. And maybe they'd have 1 or 2 encore songs.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a short concert based on how concerts, I don't know how long they go nowadays, but albums are so much longer now too. Like having 7 songs on an album in 1972 was like totally normal. But now people expect 12 or 14.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are pretty extended jams too.
Very. So this one is again from Osaka on August 16th. It's 4 times longer than the original.
I like how the organ goes up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Changes it a little bit. I feel like there's a little more energy in this version than on the album.
Yeah. Well, the tone on the album of John's organ is really great.
Oh, no doubt.
Do a really good job live too, but there's something about that when it comes in on the album. We talked about in the last episode of how Richie brought this to Ian Gillan, saying with this little chromatic run here, saying that he thought it could be something like "Come On," and that's just exactly what Ian Gillan did. Just yelled "Come on." And then Ian Gillan just wrote a ton of astronomical puns. Hear John doubling his vocals on the organ.
Yeah.
Really stands out on the live recording. Incredible. I mean, Ian Gillan gets a lot of credit, but I don't know that he gets enough. How incredible he was.
Definitely not.
Because I think he's like kind of like in like musician groups, like he's well known, you know, or music groups. But I mean, if you walked up to a person on the street and asked them who Ian Gillan was, would they even know? Would they know who he is versus some other singers of the time? Roger going a little nuts on the bass there. I feel bad skipping ahead, but we got a lot of jam ahead of us.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know if there's any. You know what? Let's just pick a couple random spots.
Well, it looks like they're going back into the riff.
It could be tricking you though. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, I remember what they go into it after this. They did
Oh, right.
that one.
Yep. So they kind of like finish out the song and then have the big extended jam afterwards.
Yeah.
There we go.
There's Richie rubbing the guitar up against the amps.
Yep. So this we'll skip ahead minute by minute. So we'll go. We'll go to 6 minutes in. We've still got John Lord. 7 minutes in. John Lord's going crazy. 8 minutes in.
This is kind of funny this way.
It's extended. 9 minutes in. Oh, did he just finish? Oh, Richie's doing his volume swells.
No, I think that's still John Lord.
I think that's Richie doing volume swells. Let's go to the 10-minute mark and see. Maybe that was still John.
Well,
Torturing a cat. 11 minutes in. Get the little octave thing on the bass going again. "12 minutes in. Oh, they're breaking it down again.
now it's Richie's turn.
Now we got Richie. John had a big turn. He was going for like 7 minutes. All right, 13 minutes in. Oh, here's the volume swells.
Per round, we usually throw him in. Oh, I feel him.
Yep. It's almost like they're fading out. Let's go 14 minutes here. Did Richie like take a bathroom break or what's going on?
I can picture him doing that, just like putting his guitar on the stand, hitting one note, walking away.
Let
He's coming back.
Let the feedback go crazy.
He just walks back out, hiking his pants up, you know, like
He's probably tying them with a rope.
like a medieval rope.
He's like, I just had to go bless the chamber pot, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
All right,
oh
so
man.
15 minutes in, he's still messing around the volume swells. I wonder what the audience was thinking at this point if they knew that this was what they were getting into, especially in Japan.
If they knew what they were getting into.
I mean, they'd never been to Japan before, so I know they had a huge following there, but I don't know if they were as familiar with their live stuff. 16 minutes in. Oh, it's getting frantic again. "17 minutes in. Some typical kind of organ backing with Richie's pseudo-classical take.
We're gonna get a little Ian here.
One more Ian, yep. Minutes? Oh, 19 minutes is when it ends. Maybe? There's like a minute left. Oh.
They're like, are they done? Can we clap?
What just happened? A very respectful audience. Well, there you go. There you have it. That's Made in Japan. Quite an end to quite a crazy ending to that live show, but gives you a great sense of where they would have been. And what's your rating for Space Truckin'?
All right, let's see. What do we got here? Space Truckin', 4 and 4 from both of us.
All right, I think that's good. I mean,
All
like,
right.
yeah, I appreciate the live jam, but I think it could have been a little less. There's
Yeah.
a lot of filler in that jam, even skipping ahead minute by minute there.
So, yeah, if we want to go over our totals here, I gave it a solid 4.0, and you gave it a 4.14, which is actually, it's kind of, you gave it the same rating that you gave Machine Head, 4.14 Machine Head, too. I gave it a little less than Machine Head, which I'm kind of surprised about. So that means I like it pretty much about the same.
I think though you can't really, like, if you rank song by song individually, thinking of each song in a vacuum, and then add it up together, that doesn't necessarily equate to what you think of the album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very hard to say, like, if I had the choice between listening to this and Machine Head, I'm going to listen to Machine Head.
But I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me when I'm looking at these, though, because it kind of puts into perspective. Like, I haven't heard these albums in a while, some of them. So it makes sense. Like, if I'm looking at my highest ranked albums are like In Rock, Machine Head, and Made in Japan, and I'm like, yeah, I would put those like on a mix and listen to those before anything else so far.
Yep.
You know, like those are definitely, especially after listening to them. Like I think, like, I didn't think I would rate Made in Japan as high as I did, but I mean, I forget that these are like versions of songs that I love how they did them at the time, and they came out really well. I would say, with the exception of like The Mule, which is the only one that, in the context of like this whole album, I'm actually the most disappointed with. They probably could have. Geez, if that was the best night that they had, then I wonder what the other one sounded like.
Yeah, I think like we said, the performance wise it was probably really good, but the sound quality just wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Although your main complaint is about his mix or his vocals in the mix, which is something that could have easily been corrected.
Well, there's that, and the kind of the loose Ian Pace's kind of loose interpretation of the drum part, which we already talked about, was I liked it when it was more tight on the album. It's kind of like the same with trying to think of what else. Well, actually, not really. I mean, like later on, "You Fool No One."
Yeah,
Is
similar idea to that song, and I think that song ended up replacing the mule in the live set as the drum solo vehicle.
Yeah, which, I mean, I love both versions for different reasons, but it's like the whole cowbell intro and everything. And I mean, if you think about it, like, Ian Pace has a lot of distinguishable kind of like drum things that he's done, like intros or like things to songs, like maybe not like radio friendly ones. Like, you hear the opening beat to like Rock and Roll All Night or We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister, and you like immediately know what it is.
Right.
But I'm not like Deep Purple, I guess, doesn't really have that so much for popular songs. But in the world of Deep Purple, he has a lot of pretty cool stuff that he does.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not a drum guy at all. Like, I'm not somebody that's like a drum geek or somebody that enjoys the drums. Like, I enjoy the guitar most of all.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also didn't like I said in an earlier episode, I didn't like any form of keyboards until I heard John Lord.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So
we grew up in a very dark period of I should say we came of age in a very dark period of when we were born. Keyboards were probably at their best, but yeah, we weren't really maybe cognizant of that. So quickly wrapping things up, the album was an immediate success. The band didn't give it much thought. Glover and Pace were the only two that even showed up to do the mix. Everyone else was just like, we don't care. That's just a stupid live album. It wasn't really thought like it was going to achieve the status that it did. According to Martin Birch, Gillan and Blackmore never heard the final album. He speculates that neither one of them even listened to it.
Wow.
In the US, it was delayed until April, and it would have been released after Who Do We Think We Are, but in January it came out in the UK, which was um, I'm sorry, in December it came out in the UK, and it right before Who Do We Think We Are, which came out in January. So I know that different countries always had really wildly different release dates in those days.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers released the Smoke on the Water single and coupled it with the live recording. And at one point, both of them were in the charts together, the studio version and the live version, which is kind of interesting. Gillan was very critical of his performance on this album, which is interesting because Martin Birch doesn't think he ever heard it. So I don't know what he's critical of, but he just wasn't happy with his performance. Maybe just after the shows, he didn't feel like he gave a good performance, but
Yeah.
I would say we heard different tonight.
Yeah.
John Lord says this is his favorite Deep Purple album. He says the band was at the height of its powers. That album was the epitome of what we stood for in those days, which I would agree. The critics love the album. It was a huge success, and definitely over time has grown into like this legendary status of live albums. There's a lot of positive things said about this album from people who grew up to be huge icons, like the guys in Metallica and Bruce Dickinson and all them. People just loved this album. And it, kind of redefined Deep Purple and live albums in general, just for what they could be and what they could achieve. And then everyone wanted to jump on this bandwagon after this and release a really cool live album, what they were capable of live. We talked about already, but there's the expanded version, which is really interesting if you're really a Deep Purple fanatic. I remember when you picked that up and we listened to all three nights way back when. You hear the differences, but and here it was actually the most fun was I remember we put on each version of Smoke on the Water, just hear how Richie screwed with it in the beginning because it was different every night.
I remember there was one that was really bad. Like there was one where it almost sounded like he broke a string or something. Like,
well, I remember we thought he was screwing up at the time. Like we were like, oh, he screwed up every night. Like they had to, but like obviously they could have just edited that beginning part out. It was
yeah.
an intentional thing. But that's it. That's Made in Japan. And really quickly, we got a few little quick news nuggets before we break for today. Let me just pull up what we got here. I'm sorry, not news, but Deep Purple in history, or some history moments. We like to go over, and we always kind of expand this on Twitter to include lots of different things. But so this week that this episode comes out will be July 22nd through July 28th. And on July 25th, 1969, the Hallelujah single was released, being the first single to feature Mark II. And it was the B-side of that was April, which was definitely our favorite song from the Deep Purple album. It starts off, I don't know, they must have just cut off the first 6 minutes of it, all that goofy orchestral stuff, and just gone straight to that absolutely rocking ending to that song.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they would have kept all 10, 12 minutes or whatever.
Holy cow, who knows?
On July 28th, 1954, Steve Morse is born. He was the current and longest tenured Deep Purple guitar player.
And the one with the best physique, obviously.
Yes, not saying much, but yes.
Look at this dude. Like, Richie wouldn't wear no tank top like that.
Richie was not wearing any tank tops.
No, he was wearing those like flowy black shirts and those like black pants that like my dad would wear to work. Like that's what they looked like,
those shirts though, those like a V-neck that went all the way down to his belly button and then it had like some strings tying together, Look, he's a
and then they're like those like black like polyester like flat front pants, like and then his high heels and I don't know, freaking bottle of mead off to the side somewhere or something. Oh, Richie.
Oh, Richie. Then we got the legendary Windows album being released on July 26, 1974, and great album cover featuring a giant traditional John Lord. That's traditional John Lord right there with the giant glasses and the big walrus mustache. And you can see the reflection of the orchestra in his sunglasses. And this album featured John Lord, Tony Ashton, David Coverdale, Glenn Hughes, Ray Fenwick, and Pete York. It's great. Really, really cool stuff. Love that album. Then on July 28th, 1979, Rainbow releases the Down to Earth album, which is not the strongest album cover, I don't think.
No.
But
No, not the worst. I think that Straight Between the Eyes was probably the worst.
yeah, it's definitely not good.
This one is at least kind of cool.
And then finally, on July 22nd, 2015, Eddie Hardin passed away. Great longtime collaborator with Roger Glover on Butterfly Ball, with doing his Wizards convention, which features Glenn Hughes and John Lord and all those guys. Really, really great musician, great stuff that he offered to that whole scene. And I remember hearing when he passed away, and it was very sad. So we'll be remembering him on July 22nd. And with that, I think we are calling a close to yet another episode of the Deep Purple podcast.
Yes.
So with that, I guess we'll catch up next week. And have
All
a
right.
great night, or I guess I should say early morning for you now.
Oh, that's right. It's 12:30.
Oh crap.
But it's fun. It's worth staying up for to listen to these guys. So
Absolutely. Well, you have a good night, my friend, and we'll talk to you
You
next
too.
week.
okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.